The eggnog was made from scratch, the same way I'd been making it for 30 years. Egg yolks beaten pale, a splash of bourbon for flavor, fresh nutmeg grated right before serving. My daughter-in-law had texted that afternoon to ask if I needed anything from the store. I told her no. She texted back a heart emoji and nothing else. They arrived just after 6, my son carrying a bottle of wine I hadn't asked for, and my daughter-in-law trailing behind with a store-bought pie still in its plastic clamshell. We sat down to dinner the way we always did on Christmas Eve. Same table, same chairs that creaked a little on the right side, same view of snow coming down soft outside the window over the sink. I had made a crown roast, roasted parsnips, a salad nobody would touch. It was by all appearances a perfectly ordinary holiday. My son waited until dessert. That was something I noticed later. He'd been patient. Let the meal settle before he brought it up. He refilled his wine glass, set the bottle down gently, and looked across the table at me with the particular expression I had come to recognize over the past 2 years. Not quite concern. Something that wore the costume of concern. "Mom," he said, "we've been thinking, we want to talk to you about your finances." I set down my fork. "We're not trying to be pushy," my daughter-in-law added quickly, leaning forward. "It's just, you're managing a lot on your own. The house, the investments, the accounts. We want to help. We thought maybe we could take over the day-to-day management, just to make things easier on you." My son nodded. He had clearly rehearsed this. "I've already looked into it. There are some simple things we could do. Joint accounts, a power of attorney, just as a precaution. That way, if anything ever happened, we'd be able to step in right away." I picked up my eggnog, took one slow sip, set it back down. "That's very thoughtful," I said, "but it's already been taken care of." My daughter-in-law smiled, assuming I meant something routine. "Oh, you already have some things set up?" "Everything," I said. "My attorney finalized the trust documents 3 weeks ago. The accounts have been restructured. The beneficiary designations have been updated. It's all been done." The table went quiet. My son looked at me the way people look at a door that won't open when they were certain it would. "What do you mean, restructured?" "I established a donor-advised fund," I said, "through the community foundation downtown. My retirement accounts, my investment portfolio, the life insurance. It all flows into that fund upon my passing. The house I intend to sell when I'm ready. That proceeds will go into the fund as well." My daughter-in-law's smile had gone completely still. "You set up a foundation," my son said. His voice had an odd flatness to it, the kind that comes right before something breaks. "A charitable giving vehicle," I said, "to support education programs locally. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time." He shook his head. "You made a decision this big and you didn't say anything to us." "I didn't realize it required your input." "Mom," his voice got tighter, "we're your family. We should have been part of that conversation." "You're welcome to have that conversation," I said. "But the decisions have already been made." My daughter-in-law pushed back from the table, smoothed her napkin, and stood. "I need some air." Her voice was very flat. She walked to the back door, opened it, and stood looking out at the snow without putting on her coat. My son stayed seated. He stared at the tablecloth for a long moment, jaw working, like he was searching for a different way in. "Was this because of me?" he asked finally. "Did you do this because you're angry with us about something?" "No," I said. "I did it because it was time." He left 20 minutes later. They both did. The pie sat on the counter, still in its clamshell. I washed the dishes, dried them, put them away. Then I went to my planner on the kitchen desk and drew a single line through the item I'd written there that morning. "Tell Leland the truth." The messages started around midnight, long ones, which surprised me. My son had never been a man who wrote much. Short texts about practical things, a call when he needed something. Never paragraphs, but that night he sent me paragraphs, each one circling the same point from a different angle. "You had no right to do this without telling us. We had plans. We were trying to help you. Do you have any idea how this feels?" I read them all the next morning over coffee. Then I set the phone face down and thought about what he'd said at the table. We had plans. I had suspected those words were coming for a while. The first time I knew something was wrong was in March. My financial advisor, a woman named Ms. Brewer, who I'd worked with for 11 years, called to tell me with some delicacy that she wanted to confirm whether my sons had my authorization to ask questions about my accounts. He had called twice, she said, once in January and once in February. He had been asking about account balances, beneficiary designations, whether I had a current will on file. She wanted to make sure I was aware. I told her I was not. I thanked her for calling, and then I sat in the chair beside the window in my living room for a long time, watching a cardinal at the feeder outside, thinking, he hadn't asked me. He hadn't called me at all in January or February, not to see how I was doing, not to ask about the holidays, not about anything personal. But he had called my financial advisor twice, asking about my accounts. I thought back over the previous year, the subtle shift I'd noticed in how he talked to me, the questions that had started slipping into conversation. Is the house paid off? Have you thought about what you'll do with all this space eventually? You really should have an estate plan in place, Mom. At your age, it's important. Always framed as concern. Always delivered in that particular tone that positions itself as a gift you should feel grateful to receive. My knee had been giving me serious trouble since October. Bone on bone. The orthopedic surgeon said I'd need a replacement within the year. I hadn't told my son. I had mentioned once, in passing, that the stairs in the house had gotten harder on me lately, and he had said, "Yeah, that place is a lot to manage," in a tone that contained no offer of help. Just observation. Just noting the fact of my difficulty and moving on. The last time I'd asked him to come by, there was a dead tree in the backyard that needed cutting down before it fell on the fence. He said he'd try to make it out that weekend. He never came. That was 14 months before Christmas Eve. I sat with all of that for several days after Ms. Brewer's call. Then I called my friend Geneva. Geneva and I had known each other for 22 years. We met in a watercolor class at the community center back when we were both newly widowed and looking for somewhere to put ourselves on Tuesday evenings. She had been through her own version of this. A daughter who'd expected to inherit a beach property, a whole family architecture built on assumptions that had never once been spoken aloud. She understood exactly what it felt like when someone you loved started treating your future like a resource they had a prior claim on. You already know what you need to do, she said. You just need someone to say it's aloud. I called my attorney the following Monday. We met twice. The first appointment to review my existing documents and talk through what I wanted. The second to sign the new ones. It was not complicated, legally. A house paid off, a retirement account I'd contributed to for 30 years, a modest investment portfolio, a life insurance policy. None of it made me wealthy, but I had built it one careful year at a time, and I intended to have the final word on what became of it. The trust was updated. The donor-advised fund was established through the Community Foundation. I also insured my medical power of attorney named Geneva, not my son, as my designee. My attorney sealed both documents and filed them the same week. I didn't tell Leland, not to be cruel, but I had spent enough of my life bending my decisions around the feelings of people who had not extended me the same consideration. He came to the house 2 days after Christmas. My daughter-in-law stayed in the car. He stepped inside the way he always had. No pause at the threshold, no waiting to be invited, the comfortable ease of a man who had never quite stopped thinking of a place as partly his. You should have told me, he said. Maybe, I said, but I didn't. That's not an answer, Mom. I've been managing my own life for 67 years. I don't think I need to preview my decisions for you. He flinched. I'm not saying you owe me a preview. I'm saying we're family. You don't make a change like this in secret. Interesting, I said, because when you called Ms. Brewer in January, you didn't tell me either. You were asking about my account balances twice and you never said one word to me about it. The color changed in his face. He knew immediately what I meant. He didn't try to deny it. I was worried, he said after a pause. You were gathering information, I said. Those are different things. He sat down at the kitchen table, heavy, like being caught had settled into his body all at once. He looked around the room. At the boxes in the corner I'd been quietly filling for weeks, the walls where I'd already taken down some of the framed photographs. He took that in without comment. Are you selling the house? He asked. Yes, on my own timeline. Where are you going? A condo near the river. 1 floor, good light, close to downtown. I've wanted to be in that neighborhood for years. He was quiet for a moment. You planned all of this? Yes, I said, while you were planning too. He had nothing to say to that. My daughter-in-law came inside later that afternoon, after he had driven off. She knocked first, which surprised me. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes swollen, and I could tell she had been working up to something in the car. I want you to understand where we were coming from, she started. Things have been tight. His contract work has been slow, and with the baby coming in June— I didn't know about the baby, I said. She looked at the table. We were going to tell you. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I went to the drawer beside the refrigerator and came back with a folder. Inside was a printed spreadsheet. I set it in front of her. 8 years of dates down the left column. Beside each one, a description and a number. Down payment assistance on their first apartment in 2016, $8,000. Moving costs that same year, $700. Graduate school application fees and test prep. Emergency car repair in 2018, $400. Wedding contribution in 2019, $6,000. Medical bills for a procedure my daughter-in-law had in 2021 that insurance had denied, $3,100. Groceries delivered during the months they were between apartments, $809. A loan payment I'd covered when his contract work dried up in 2022 for $200. Total at the bottom, $26,000. Amount repaid, $0. She looked at that paper for a long time. She turned it slightly, as if a different angle might show something different. It didn't. I kept this, I said, not to hold it over anyone, but because I knew there would come a day when I'd need to remember what I'd given before someone asked for more. We didn't keep track, she whispered. I know, I said, that's the point. She folded the paper carefully, crease by crease. She didn't take it with her. She stood, said she needed to get home, and left. The door closed quietly behind her. That evening, a neighbor texted to let me know my daughter-in-law had posted something online, something soft-edged and carefully worded, about the difficulty of pregnancy and feeling unsupported by family. She hadn't named me. She hadn't needed to. The comments filled in the rest. An aunt who lived across the country wrote that she was shocked. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a message asking if I was all right. I didn't respond to any of them, not that night, not the next day. Geneva called after she saw it. Let it pass, she said. It's hard to let something pass when people are already deciding. People who matter, she said, won't decide without asking you first. I printed a copy and put it in a folder in my desk drawer. Filed it the same week with my attorney. Not out of anger, out of the same habit that had served me for 30 years. Document what happens because memory alone is never enough when things get complicated. 2 women from my book club raised it at our January meeting, gently, the way well-meaning people approach things they know are not quite their business. One of them said she hoped things could be smoothed over, that with a grandchild on the way, perhaps there was room for everyone to take a step back. I pulled the spreadsheet from my bag, unfolded it just enough to show the heading and the final number. She leaned in and read what she could read, then sat back. Some things, I said, have already been quite thoroughly accounted for. She didn't raise it again. Geneva came by on a Saturday in February with groceries and no warning, which was the kind of friend she was. She made us grilled cheese sandwiches and we sat in the kitchen while snow came down outside, and I told her everything. The call from Ms. Brewer, the appointments with my attorney, the way my son's face had looked when I said I didn't need his input. You did right, she said. I keep waiting to feel worse about it. You're feeling what you're supposed to feel, she said, relieved. Don't let anyone convince you that's the wrong emotion. She had a literacy program she ran through the library. Volunteer tutors paired with adults working toward their GED. She'd been trying to get it properly registered and find sustainable funding for over a year. We spread her folders across the kitchen table and spent the afternoon working through it. board structure bylaws, how to approach a first grant application. When my fund is fully active, I told her, I want to direct something your way. She looked at me over her reading glasses. You're already contributing. You've been helping me figure out this paperwork for 2 hours. I laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one, from somewhere low in my chest that hadn't been used much lately. The house sold in April. The buyers were a couple in their 30s, both teachers, both calm and careful, and genuine in a way that was immediately apparent. They walked through every room like people who intended to stay. Before they left, the wife stood in the kitchen doorway and said, "This feels like a home someone really loved." I told her it had been. She asked if she could keep the garden beds and the old wooden bench on the back porch. I said yes to both without hesitation. The condo was ready in May. First floor, an elevator in the lobby, morning sun that came through the east window, and settled on the kitchen floor in a wide rectangle I found immediately. Unreasonably lovely. No stairs, no gutters, no roof to negotiate with every time a storm came through. The first morning, I made coffee and stood at the window and simply stood there. No television, no phone, just the light changing across the floor and the quiet, which felt different from the quiet in the old house. Lighter somehow, unencumbered. My son and I exchanged a few texts through the spring. Brief ones, practical things. He sent a photo of the ultrasound in April. I said I was glad everything looked healthy. That was most of it. Then in July, a letter arrived, handwritten, which he had never done in his adult life. Mom, I've been sitting with this for months and I still don't have the right words, but I wanted to try. I told myself everything I was doing was about protecting you. But I think what I was actually doing was protecting an idea I had about what our life was supposed to look like. What role you were supposed to play in it. I treated your future like something I had a say in. I assumed you'd always be there the same way. I stopped asking how you were and started thinking about what you had. I don't know exactly when that happened, but I know it happened, and I know that's on me. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I broke something real. I just wanted you to hear it from me directly. I read it twice, set it on the counter beside my coffee, and left it there for a while. He hadn't asked about the trust or the foundation. He hadn't mentioned the house or the money. He had simply said, I assumed. I know that's on me. It was not everything, but it was honest, and honesty from him had become a rarer thing than it once was, so I received it as what it was. I waited 2 weeks before writing back, short, warm, no reopening of wounds. I received your letter. I'm glad you wrote. I hope the summer is treating you well, and I look forward to meeting the baby when the time comes. That was enough for now. Geneva's program received its first small grant in September. We had dinner that evening at the Vietnamese place we both liked, the one with the wobbly corner table we always requested anyway. She had 15 tutors signed up and a wait list of students. She kept thanking me for the early hours reviewing her bylaws and the introduction to my attorney, and I kept telling her she had done the real work herself. You believed it was possible before I did, she said. That matters more than you think. I started volunteering 2 mornings a week at the library reading room that fall. My own thing, separate from Geneva's program. I sat with early readers and listened to them work through words the way a person works through a lock, methodically, patiently, trying each combination until something opens. There was a boy named Arlo who came every Tuesday with the most serious face I had ever seen on a child his age. He never rushed. He sounded out every syllable. One morning he looked up from his book mid-page and said, matter-of-factly, "You're good at waiting." Then he went back to reading. I thought about that the whole drive home. My evenings were quiet in the way I had forgotten evenings could be. I made dinner for myself without calculating anyone else's preferences. I read on the couch with the lamp on. I kept a journal, nothing meant for anyone else, just the act of writing things down to make them feel true. There is a small fireproof safe in the bedroom closet, the size of a shoebox. Inside, my birth certificate, my updated will, the trust documents, the medical directives, the contact information for my attorney, and one envelope addressed to no one in particular. That envelope holds a single typed page. It begins, By the time you read this, I hope you understand that what I did with a clear mind and a full heart. It goes on from there. Nothing dramatic. Just the truth as plainly as I know how to write it. I am 67 years old. I have buried a husband and a sister and two friends I was certain would outlive me. I know what it costs to love someone, and I know what it costs to allow that love to be treated as a given. Year after year, slowly, until you can barely remember what it felt like to give it freely and expect nothing in return. What I did was not cold. It was not a punishment. It was the decision of a woman who finally understood that her future belonged to her and that claiming it was not the same as taking something away from someone else. The cardinal came back to the feeder this fall. I noticed it on a Tuesday morning while I was finishing my second cup of coffee. It sat there for a full minute, very still, like it had somewhere to be but wasn't in a hurry. I watched it until it flew. Then I turned to the fresh page in my planner and wrote down the next thing I wanted to do. Not what someone needed from me, not what someone had already decided I owed them. Just the next thing I wanted. And that, I've come to understand, is its own kind of inheritance. The kind you build quietly, in the years before anyone notices you've been building.